and welcome back to the Goodreads Virtual Book Club. I'm Brianna, and joining me is
Jasmine.
And this month, for Native American Heritage Month, we read a book called Yellow Bird, Oil Murder and a Woman's Search for Justice in Indian Country by Sierra Crane Murdoch. This is a big book. It's a big topic. There's a lot to talk about. We're going to do our very best to talk about it all. I don't think we'll be able to go into as specific as we want to, but if you want those specifics, please do read this book. It's very good. We haven't read that many nonfiction titles in the book club thus far, so it was kind of nice to do something a little bit different.
I like nonfiction.
Yeah, I usually don't like nonfiction as much as fiction, but I did enjoy this. There are a lot of characters, just forewarning, there's a lot of characters. I got some of the characters confused, especially the law enforcement characters, because there are so many.
Just a lot of information going
There's
on.
a lot of information in this, and there's a lot of additional reading you can do at the end of the book. The author includes all of her research, so there's a lot to unpack if you want to unpack it. We'll start with just like a very, very brief summary of what this book is about. So the bare bones basic is there was a very large oil boom in the early 2010s in North Dakota in this oil reserve called the Bakken. Is that how you say it?
Bakken.
Bakken, which kind of connects, it's 200,000 miles underneath Montana, North Dakota, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. So there's this huge oil boom on this reservation, the Fort Berthold Reservation in North Dakota. And so that is happening, and a young gentleman named Kristopher Clarke goes missing. He's commonly known as KC, and he just kind of vanishes off the face of the earth, and a Native American woman named Lissa is determined to find him. And the author, Sierra Crane Murdoch, meets with Lissa a lot and is like covering content around this oil boom and stumbles across Kristopher Clarke's disappearance. These two connect, and that's basically how the story unfolds. Like, that's the bare bones basic. So we think we're going to try. There's so much historical context in this, and there's so much going on with this indigenous, they're threefold tribe on this reservation. Yes. It's like pre-flood, post-flood, pre-boom, post-boom of oil. There's a lot going on. So we're going to try and just talk a little bit about pre-flood reservation. Well, it wasn't a reservation yet, but like pre-flood history in this area of North Dakota. So basically,
I think it was a reservation before
the flood. It was, but we're going to go way back.
Oh, okay.
To talk about the three tribes. So this area of North Dakota is home to three affiliated tribes, the Mandan. Mm-hmm. Jasmine listened to this on audiobook, which is great because the pronunciation, in my mind, I pronounced it completely different than how it actually is pronounced. Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara. I pronounced it Arikara in my mind, which is completely false. Arikara. So it's around the Missouri River. So they didn't start as three affiliated tribes. They were each their own individual tribe. And they basically were around the Missouri River, which was their main source of both income and basically livelihood, and, water.
Well, it had farmland.
Farmland. And so basically, when European settlers started to come in, the U.S. government was slowly taking away more and more and more land from these tribes and decimating the tribes to the point where they formed the three affiliated tribes, because some of the members, especially the Mandan tribe, had like nobody left in it.
Yeah.
They had like nobody. So they formed these three affiliated tribes to kind of protect their whatever culture and heritage they have left after the United States government decimated it, basically. So they came together, and then they were put on this reservation. Initially, they were given over, what was it?
11 million.
11 million acres of land, And I don't know if you guys listen to our other library podcast, Dark Fascinations, but we read a book called Winter Counts, which is a fictional noir type book, but it deals with a lot of the same issues as Yellow Bird in a fictional context with the Lakota tribe, which you do hear about in this book as well. But basically, the United States government would give, there's like a whole, such a big history, but they would give white settlers priority over land, and they could get parcels of land. And these white settlers could also marry into this tribe to gain access to their land and property and then immediately leave.
Except for they did make a law after that they saw that it was happening, that if they divorce, the white people won't get any of the land or the...
Yes, they did, but
that was like in like late 1900s.
Yeah. So
1980s, like
1980s. But yeah, so there's like a lot going on. They point out in Yellow Bird, like one of the most famous happenings, that is, I guess more infamous is a better word, but was the Osage tribe in Georgia, and they found a bunch of minerals in their tribal lands and got really, really wealthy. And a lot of these white people were like, sweet, land and money for, growing whatever we want to grow. And they would marry into the tribe and take all of their wealth and leave.
Which is another book. What is it? The Moon Killers?
Yes, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's pretty rampant, and it seemed like very popular. And in this one, a lot of white settlers wanted land for like ranches and cattle grazing and things like that. So then would marry into the tribe in order to get access to their land and their farmland.
Because it was also super cheap.
Yes, it was, yes. And so basically, the more resources found on this land, the less land the indigenous tribes are given. The United States government will take it.
Yeah.
So basically now they have not quite 1 million acres of land, and I think it's not this one of the saddest parts, and we're saying pre-flood, is because the United States government decided to build a dam on the land of the Mandan, the Hidatsa, and the Arikara tribe. They decided to kind of thwart the river and build a dam to make a man-made lake, and they just sunk this whole town, basically, including their graveyard and everything, without moving anybody, and everybody lost everything they had. And the tribe did try and fight it, but it did not.
Yeah,
it did not go. The United States government just blocked it.
Yeah, in the book, if the United States government wants something, they're just going to take it.
Yeah, and they did. They took it. And so that really plays into a lot of the book, because the book also, it isn't about the murder of Casey. It's told through a very unique lens of Lissa and her family, and there's a lot of talk of generational trauma, intergenerational trauma, and epigenetics, how you can carry trauma basically in your DNA and pass it along. And it's more about that than the actual murder of Casey Clarke, because the oil boom in the murder of Casey Clarke is just really showing how just rampant the violence is because of financial interest, basically.
I think it brought a scope. It brought more attention to what was going on, because a white man got killed on Indian land, and everyone was like, for a long time, no one was doing anything about it. And the mom was like, really like, what happened to my kid? What happened to my kid? And then Lissa, a Native American woman, I think she's a Rikra, was like, I'm gonna go find him.
Yeah.
And she brought a lot of awareness to it.
She did. And that's another thing that we should mention, because we were talking about, the United States government and tribal law. Well, basically on reservations, it seems like because the law is so complex and so convoluted, nobody will really pick up a case, because tribal officers are they're not allowed to pursue or investigate any federal offenses. So That could be sexual assault, that could be murder, that could be drug trafficking. They're not allowed to investigate any of that. They can, find all of the people. They can even arrest the people and have them in jail, but it's up to the federal government to pick up those cases and prosecute. And most of the time, the federal government doesn't do it, especially in the sexual assault instance. There are like 35% of cases the federal government doesn't pick up on reservations. And they mention this in the book too, how basically you can get away with almost anything on the reservation up to murder, because it's so complex between tribal law, state law, and federal law as to whose jurisdiction it is that basically nothing happens. And that's kind of what happened to Casey, because he's just disappeared. There's no necessary indication of foul play or anything. So he's, obviously an adult. Perhaps they think he just maybe went on an extended vacation or just moved, and there's nothing they can do about that because it's not federal right now. Tribal officers can't investigate, and the state won't investigate. Also, there's so much area, especially on the reservation, and they have like 2 tribal deputies that cover the entire area of the reservation. So that plus we'll talk more too about the oil boom. There's a lot happening.
And I don't think
in this like big but small area.
I don't think the tribal officers can do anything to white people because they're not their citizens.
They can't.
Yeah, they can only do it to Native Americans that live in that tribe. Yeah. Which is a problem we've seen all those other reservations and Alaska and Canada where all this stuff was happening because they have no way to enforce their
they have no jurisdiction. They have to send it to the federal government or the state police, and it's up to those 2 entities to decide whether they're going to investigate and pursue that or whether they won't. And it seems to be, especially statistically, more likely that they won't.
Yeah.
So this is the pre-flood. So their whole town, all their livelihood, everything gets flooded. Basically, they don't have anything. And I think that's, at least for the immediate generational trauma in the Yellow Bird family, that's kind of immediately where it starts. There's obviously so far back.
Yes.
But in the sense of the people that we meet in the book, that we can say that's kind of where it starts. And everybody is having a really hard time after that, basically. So these 3 tribes were so reduced that they clumped together, and it was more out of necessity than necessarily choice. And there's still like infighting between tribal members of these 3 tribes because of past history that they've had before. So it's not necessarily like the most easy of relationships.
It's like being put together with just your neighbor, like
basically,
if you and your neighbors just had to be put into one house, you're like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to forget that you did stuff. Clip my hedges out my asking.
Yeah, so it's they're basically stuck. And then so the dam that they built flooded 1/6 of the reservation, and pretty much destroyed anything that was near the Missouri River, which they're there for a reason. And then, so that's pre-flood, so they stole resources then. And now, post-flood, kind of like pre-happening boom, they found new resources that they want. And they found oil, and that oil is in the Bakken. Someday I'm going to remember it. Which, as we said, spreads a lot. It's over 200,000 miles underground of oil. And so I think, like, obviously Texas is known for its oil and oil fracking. And so Alaska and now North Dakota, they found this huge boom. And a lot of, this is like when the kind of greed starts to take set with some of the tribal council members. So most notably Tex Hall and another guy named Spencer. And they are like true, like business / con men, kind of. More Spencer. Tex has his moments too, but they see opportunities. They see opportunities for great wealth. And maybe it started out as something good in their minds. Maybe it didn't. We don't know. You have to make your own conclusions after you read the book on what you think their ultimate intentions were.
Yeah.
But basically, they see the opportunity for some big wealth. And if you believe Tex Hall, he sees opportunity for wealth for the tribes. Whether you believe him or not, that's what he says.
Definitely needed a yacht.
Yes. So we'll talk about that. But so they see all this opportunity because basically tribal members are being asked to sell parts of their land in order for all of these different companies to frack oil.
Yeah.
And they will get they'll get money for their land, and then they'll get a certain percentage of the profits of the oil. Mm-hmm. So there could potentially be a lot of money to be made. And so Spencer, the first guy, opens a casino, a really big, fancy casino on the reservation. And Tex Hall, it's like crazy. I think too, it must have been intense, like to basically after the flood have nothing to having all of this natural resources, and all of these people are coming to you telling you like they can sell you stuff to make your life better.
Yeah.
And then you have to decide. And I feel like it's so hard. So basically in the book, it talks about how a lot of the indigenous populations on these reservations, they're basically like domestic, what's the word I'm looking for? Like dependents on the federal government. Yeah. And that's how they're described. Like they're dependent on the federal government for their livelihood, basically, is how the book describes it. And
the government made them that way.
Yeah, they made them that way. The United States government made
and they don't keep up to any of their promises.
No. And so because basically there's no real free will to decide anything, I can only imagine having all of these entities coming to you to decide on what you want to purchase because you have all this money now.
Well, they also don't know how much their land is worth.
No, they have no idea.
How much oil's worth.
So a lot of people don't even know they have land because when you go
Lissa didn't know.
No, when you go to the Bureau of like Tribal Affairs office to get a map, they won't give it to you.
Yeah, you have to have some kind of,
or you have to buy it.
Yeah,
and so many people don't even know that they have land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then when your family member, because in tribal Native American culture, it's you look out for your family, look out for the tribe. When your family member's coming up saying, just let them lease your land for $50 per acre, blah 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 blah, you're getting, I can help. This $30,000 I'm getting is going to really help me put clothes on my kids' back, food in their belly, and, fix my roof, right? That sounds like a great deal. But then the oil company is getting millions.
Yes.
And it's like, wow. And my family is what sold me out, which is what Spencer did.
That's what Spencer did. Yeah. He opened his own, well, they both did. Tex Hall did too. Yeah. They opened their own oil producer companies, basically, and had all of these people on the reservation sell them their land so they can produce oil there, and they would say, like true con men, like, it's such a great deal. You're going to make so much money. It's great. You're going to make this money, which is more money than you've ever seen in your entire life.
Yeah.
But it's a fraction of what their land is actually worth, and also like what they're doing to it. Because
fracking is horrible.
Fracking, it's still not fully illegal.
Somehow
in the United States. So basically, fracking is, so they drill into the land and they push a bunch of water and chemicals into it to break up the ground inside so they can get to the oil. That's the fracking part. I did not know this, but they use these sleeves to go in there, and there's radioactive material that comes out of the fracking process, but they have no real way to dispose of these radioactive sleeves. that they're using for their fracking equipment.
Well, it's
so
expensive to just actually dispose.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Go far away to do it.
So they end up just abandoning these radioactive sleeves in fields and all over the place.
Oh, a big corporation just throwing away their waste without care? Shocked.
I know.
I'm shocked.
It's bananas. I had no idea. I did not know that. So all of this is happening. People are making more money than they've ever had in their lives, and they're sharing the wealth with their tribal members, with their family, with all of these people, but it's a fraction of what is actually going on.
There's also the ones who are like, what do they call them? Like oil rich or whatever. Though there are some that are making a lot of money.
Yes.
And some who are making no money.
Yes.
And so that also makes a giant divide in the tribes. And so now you have, this person making millions who doesn't know, just spending it on cars. And this also ties in with the drug problem that brought this in and all that.
Yes, because this is also, it looks at so much. Not only are we looking at fracking, how dangerous it is to the environment, how dangerous it is to communities and just all livelihood as a whole, especially of these indigenous tribes on reservation lands, but also the opioid epidemic and how, because these oil booms cause so many people to flood into one spot, because they can make, you can make incredible amounts of money in a short period of time working for these oil companies doing all this fracking, and you can beat anybody. And a lot of quote unquote criminal type element people come in to make a ton of money and doing not only this oil but also selling drugs and bringing in drugs.
All that happens.
And I think
it touches on a lot of
touches
stuff.
on a lot.
Oil corruption, like the government corruption,
opioid epidemic,
drugs. There was like a little bit of the sex trafficking and prostitution in it. The murder. We gotta touch on that.
We will. I think that the author chose to tell the story really well, and that she chose to tell it through Lissa's perspective. And Lissa has basically lived through or seen all of these big, huge touchstone topics that we've just talked about. She's seen it all and been involved in it all, and her family has as well.
But I think she does a really good job of telling how in depth everything that is going on really touches the community and how it's really affected them throughout the generations, as you're saying. But she did a really good job in this book.
And Lissa, you root for her because she's such a strong,
you root for her, but you're also dude.
You don't understand her, but she's so strong and just kind of out there. She's definitely her own person.
She's also almost her own enemy too.
She can be. Sure.
And sometimes when she's talking, I'm like, man, you just need to breathe. When they're going through some of her conversations with her, I'm like, just breathe. You'll be okay. Just take a breath. Even when talking to your own children, I'm like, no wonder some of them don't talk to you right now.
Well, and I think again, showing it through that lens really shows how all this giant oil boom, this flood of wealth, this flood of opioids, and also generational and intergenerational trauma from the past has really broken communities and families, because you can see that in Lissa's own family, how people have just really grown apart, and how some people, especially in her family, just can't deal with all of this trauma. They're trying to seek release in some form or fashion, and there's her family has a lot of alcoholism in it, drug use, because they just don't really necessarily see a way out or a different way to do it, and they don't feel like they have no opportunities.
I think
which in parts is true.
I think they touched on the part where they said that the government, because they made the allotments of the land to individualize the tribe, which I think was the biggest part of the U.S. government trying to individualize the tribe to break them apart.
Well, they were trying to basically Europeanize them.
Yes.
And assimilate.
Yes.
Them
to individual
white culture, which is just not the way.
Yeah, where you look out for yourself and your own individual family versus the community as a whole. And I think that's what really broke them too, was that they stopped looking out as a community, especially when you have a few oil-rich tribal men, a lot of the councilmen.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the tribe, like I think Madeline was living in she didn't have floors for a while.
No, she was living in this old house that had crazy rat problems, snakes everywhere.
Yeah.
It was falling down. There was mold everywhere. And finally she got a new house. But the sad part was that house had so many memories.
Yeah.
That they said it would have been almost better to have the house demolished than to have it just sit vacant.
Yeah. But I think she said another uncle was living in it, his stuff was there. But it didn't feel lived in.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is really interesting, especially the perspective that the author chooses to take it with Lissa and her family. And so you learn a lot about Lissa and her family, her mother, her grandmother, her uncles, her kids. You learn a lot about them, and you really see the impacts that everything has had on a very individual basis. So it's really good because it doesn't feel removed. The effects of all of these different insane changes you don't feel removed from them because you're immediately experiencing them through this one family. But so all of this is going on. This oil boom is going on. All of these people from all over are coming to North Dakota to work on these oil rigs, and they're creating all of these, they call them man camps, but they're all over the place. And so everything is just getting gross and dirty. And it was insane. They were saying the number of assaults went up 60% in 1 year, and it was directly pretty much related to this oil boom and alcohol and drug use.
Yeah, well, you're just there, working 17 hours a day, don't have anything to do, but just a bunch of men.
Yeah. So. But I mean, it went up a crazy amount, and I think the year was 2013, insane. And, these people are making all this money. Like Jasmine said earlier, Tex Hall is making all of this money. He's the head council member, and he bought a yacht that they can't even put in this man-made lake of the dam
for
the tribe of their dead ancestors. They can't even float it in this stupid man-made lake because the federal government won't agree to it.
Yeah, they don't have the permits.
No, so it just sits there. And then he bought a helicopter, which... in writing,
the reasons why
reasoning was good was to transport people, because pretty much after the flood, after the United States government built this man-made lake, the people on the reservation lost their hospital, they lost their education, their school, they lost everything. So there's no hospital. The federal government never rebuilt a hospital on the reservation, and it's huge. It's a big area of land. So they bought this helicopter to transport people to the nearest hospital. So in writing, it was good.
Yeah.
But then it turns out that he used it more for personal means than the tribe used it for what it was supposed to be intended for.
Yeah.
And then Spencer is putting in millions, multi-million dollars into this casino, trying to make as much money as possible. And like Jasmine said, there's this growing divide between wealth and not wealth, people who sold their land, people who didn't and don't really understand the dynamics of it. And the people who have this wealth don't necessarily know how to use it. And they are sharing it, but they're also sharing it in not so great purposes by buying drugs and sharing drugs through this community. So it's just everything is running rampant and just basically getting destroyed. And in the midst of all of this, as we said, Kristopher Clarke disappears. And Kristopher Clarke worked for Blackstone, which is connected to Tex Hall. He has his own company called Maheshu. Is that how you say it? And they're connected. And Blackstone has two main proprietors, we'll call them. Sarah, and what was the dude's name? James. Why can't I remember that? But Sarah and James. And they're the heads of this Blackstone oil rig. And that's where Tex worked. And he just goes missing. Like, he literally just disappears. Like, they found his truck in a different town, but they never found him. And everybody has a different story as to what happened to him. And so Lissa is determined to find out what happened to Casey, Kristopher Clarke, and find his body. And a lot of people have, like, it's later in the book, but a lot of people have a lot of different reasonings as to why she's so intensely looking and why she's chosen this path for herself.
I think it's the replacement of an addiction.
Yeah, that's what her daughter thinks. Lissa's daughter, Shauna, thinks she's replacing one addiction with another addiction, or one obsession with another obsession. Her uncle thinks that, you know, her mother thinks that perhaps she's really looking for herself as she looks for all of these other people. And again, it's up to your interpretation as to what her ultimate motives are in searching for all of these different people. And, you know, perhaps she's just trying to, in some way, better the world around her and for her kids, because she had a really tough time and her kids had a really tough time too.
Well,
she feels a lot of guilt about that.
To her daughter, Shauna, she's like, this is what I would have done for you when you ran away that one time. I would have done this
if I was in my
And
right
Shauna
mind.
was like, no, this is for you. This isn't for you, like, apologizing to me. This is for you. Because she goes on and does this.
Yeah.
For, like, now it's, like, almost a career for her.
Yeah, she does it as a career.
I mean, she's good at it.
She finds missing people. She's really good at it.
This is a good focus for her. Like, as somebody who's, okay, again, not me personally as an addict, but who has known addicts, they obsess on things. So if you're going to obsess about a missing person, this is a good obsession. Go for it. Not hurting anybody. I mean, you're getting things done. Go do it.
Yeah. And I mean, Lissa is really the reason why the people we'll talk about it, but the people in Casey's case got prosecuted in the first place.
Yeah.
Because she was the one that was pushing this case forward. No, she did not. But she's just determined to find Casey and to find his body. And she goes out pretty much every day. She misses so much work that her boss has her quit because they just can't support it anymore, because she's so focused on, it starts with Casey, but like Jasmine was saying, it goes to more people. More and more people are coming to her to ask her to find their missing loved ones. Because again, this weird, like, nobody's laying claim to any of these missing people because of the way that...
Well, a lot of them are adults too. And when you go to the police, you've seen, if you like listen to any true crime or anything like that, it's like when you say, oh, my adult daughter or son is missing, it's been like, well, they just ran away because they're done with life and they don't want to talk to you anymore. It's like, I talked to them last week. Like, I don't think our relationship's that bad. They're just not talking to me anymore. So police don't really give a lot of weight to an adult leaving. They're just left their life. I'm like, not every adult just leaves. I don't know anyone who just I'm done.
Leaves.
Yeah, I'm gonna go live in like Argentina now. What? Without telling anybody.
Yeah. And so she kind of takes up that mantle and is very willing and wants to go and find all of these missing people. Especially, I think later in the book, she really focuses on missing and murdered Indigenous peoples but for now, anyways, it's Casey. She's looking for Casey. She manages to connect to Casey's mom, Jill, and they form a friendship, which she's also like, must be like super cool and charismatic, because she just really forms connections all over the place.
Yeah.
But she forms a real big connection with Casey's mom, Jill, and she says to her, like, hey, I know the reservation better than almost anybody, way better than, the police officers who will be investigating this. I can help you if you let me help you. And so Jill agrees, and that kind of starts this whole journey of Lissa looking for Casey. and all of the things that she uncovers whilst doing so, which is a lot of what we've already talked about.
Yeah, and she had like a real feeling about James and Sarah, and so she really
from the start.
Yeah, so she really got into that, like bit into that lead, and like just went with that.
She did, because they were the last people to see Casey, and she thinks that they're lying, that they know more than what they're saying that they know. And things don't really kick off with that until, one, she with another gentleman, makes a flyer about James and Sarah saying, like, I can't, no, I'm not good with names. But so she makes a flyer basically being like, beware of these two people. Yeah. They're committing fraud all over the place with Tex Hall. Don't do business with them.
Yeah, they're probably murderers, guys.
Yeah, and so Tex Hall pulls out of their company, Blackstone, which basically kind of leads it to crumble. Because they had like other companies. They're basically a shell.
Yeah.
To embezzle tons of money from other real companies.
Tex found out that they are stealing from him, and he said, "You can just get out. Like, I'm not going to press charges. I'm going to just get out." Which speaks like, because it's $500,000. Speaks of like how much money these people are making. If you're like,
that's a drop in the bucket.
Just leave. I don't even want to deal with this. It's going to cost me more money. Just go away. And so then they go looking for a new investor, which they find in Doug.
Yes, they find in Doug, who's in Seattle, Washington, and Doug is making all these really grand promises, like, I can get all of these people, and, this company will pay you up front, and you'll get all your money back in, like, 90 days. Like, something crazy.
Yeah.
Like, when you read it, too, you're like, that seems like maybe that's not going to happen. Like,
yeah,
that's
too good to
nuts.
be true.
Exactly. But he's making all of these promises, and he can't fulfill them. Like, he can't, because at this point, too, the oil boom is starting to slow. It's not as big as it once was. And people are noticing because the oil prices are dropping. Because basically what they've done is they've over-flooded the market. So there's so much product and not as much demand. So prices are dropping. And people are kind of pulling out and they don't necessarily want to go and do this right now. But he's determined to make it work. And he's working with James and Sarah until he gets murdered in his Seattle home. And people think that
his wife did it.
Yeah, his wife did it, which is...
Because she was calm.
She was too calm.
Yeah, heaven forbid she just looked at the logic and go like, well, my husband was making a bunch of bad deals, man.
But Lissa is like, nope, I don't think so. Yeah. I think it's James and Sarah. And so then Lissa starts to form a friendship with Sarah. And... it's so interesting. Again, read into it what you will, interpret it how you will. But it seems like they both know each other is lying, and they're playing this weird game of chicken where they're actually, like, becoming friends, but, like, straight lying to each other.
Well, there was that... So Lissa had the other ego of Nadia, right? And we think Sarah had the other ego of Brian. So, and then those two are talking.
Yeah. Nadia and Brian are talking, and Lissa and Sarah are talking.
And then when Lissa and Sarah are talking, Nadia and Brian aren't talking.
No, and then they'll be like, what happened to this person? Are they okay? And then all of a sudden, that person will start talking again.
And I think she starts feeling bad. I think she starts feeling bad for Sarah because James is a awful person.
Yes.
And so I think she starts leaning into her empathy and going like, oh, get out of this situation. It's a bad guy. I'm there for you, blah, 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 blah. Trying to reel her in and stuff. But I do think she has genuine feelings of empathy for her.
Oh, I think she does too. I think they both did develop some sort of genuine relationship. Though I personally think Sarah had a lot more to do with everything than she said she did.
And got convicted of.
Kind of. Some of it. Not all of it.
Fraud.
Yeah, just fraud. I think there's more. But,
so do I.
But, so Lissa is developing this relationship with Sarah to try and kind of get the lowdown on their whole deal and what's happening with them. And also to really figure out, like, did they do something to Casey? Do they know where Casey is? Did they kill Casey? What happened? And it really, really kicks off when Doug gets murdered.
Because everyone else starts believing her finally.
Everyone else starts finally believing that Lissa is onto something here and that there is something weird going on with James and Sarah. And then the Seattle Police Department find this guy named Sukow?
Yeah, it's Suko.
There we go. They find this guy named Suko who just, like, starts confessing.
Yeah, like, he didn't care.
Like, he seemed to genuinely be racked with guilt.
Yeah, he didn't care that he was telling. Like, he cared that he had done this.
Yeah.
And, like, he felt guilty about doing it. But, and, like, I think at the end, like, I think they're in trial, he was just like, yeah, they're, like, trying to give him a defense. Like, no, I did it. I did it because of this. Just, like, give me what's coming to me.
Yeah, he was genuinely racked with guilt. But he starts, spilling everything. And enter new character named Robert Delau, who also, I think, has way more to do with it than what he admits. And he is, like, quintessential stereotypical con man.
Yeah.
He says, and Lissa believes him, and who knows, maybe he really wanted to. He was in prison, and then when he got out, he was trying to go straight. And he thought that perhaps, because, when you're working on these oil rigs, you can have any background at all and make a ton of money. And it's like one of the only jobs where you can do that. And he thought, hey, if I go here, I can make a lot of money and I can finally, like, do things the right way. And that's not what ended up happening. He ends up connecting with James and basically becomes, like, this whole, a drug trafficker, basically. Like, a straight up drug trafficker. And bringing drugs onto this reservation in North Dakota from all over the place. Really, like, all over the place. And he confesses to that part, but he really downplays his involvement in everything.
Was he there when they took him behind the juniper tree?
Yeah.
Because I remember there was a George. There's so many names.
George was one of the law enforcement people.
What's George?
George Dennis.
No, okay, yeah. So many names.
There's so many people.
It's also hard when you're listening to it and you have so many names.
Yeah, Jasmine, like, listened to the audiobook. I read it. I'm glad she listened to the audiobook because then we really know what the correct pronunciations of things are.
For a minute there, I didn't know who Casey was. I had to rewind it a few times. Like, wait, what?
Because, like, the book is and isn't about Casey. Like, Casey is a good, like, entry point into everything that is happening in this area at this time, like past and present and future. Yeah. But things are really starting to unravel, especially for James and Sarah. Because their stuff, it's starting to come out in the open. Like,
yes.
It's being exposed. And they're scrambling. They're really starting to scramble.
Yeah, people are finding out they have shell companies that,
Tex Hall, too. Because there's also a big tribal election coming up. And Tex Hall is running along with a bunch of other guys.
Yeah, he doesn't
win.
Not really.
Spoiler alert, he doesn't win.
Yeah, Mark wins. Don't know really about Mark, but he's in that story a lot.
He is.
Like,
he worked with Tex Hall in the tribal council office. So I think he won more is because he's, like, somebody people know.
Well, also
versus they don't.
Well, there was this guy who was running, and they were talking about how their speeches, right? And this guy was like, you guys need to be able to forget the past and be able to move on and, really pick yourself in the bootstraps and find your way. And Mark was like, no, these people did this to us. We're against them. We need to, blaming everything on everyone else. And that the reservation was like, one solid community and we needed to stick together. And I think that's why he won the vote.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, they both seem like different candidates. Yeah, I mean, and again, this book, it's told, like, you're jumping all over the place. Yeah. You're jumping timelines, you're jumping people, you're jumping plot lines. So, I mean, do be aware, like, you're doing a lot of jumping until it kind of all comes together in the end. But you're all over the place.
Yeah, I think there's some stuff I could have been left out. But I think she's also trying to tell the story of like how it is to live on a reservation and like all of that and how there's so many interties to that.
Yeah.
So
yes.
I get why it was in there, but I was just like, all right.
Because everybody is connected. Like, Lissa is really trying to speak to Tex Hall, and they are related by marriage, because her mom was married to his speechwriter guy, but they're related.
Yeah.
And like pretty much like when Lissa she wants to go talk to somebody, she's like, oh, we're relatives.
That's how she got the map of her land. It was
yeah.
Like,
we're relatives.
This guy, we're cousins kind of.
Yeah.
Somehow. It's kind of almost in like the Mexican culture where we have so many cousins that we don't really know about. And we're like talk to people like, oh, you know that? Oh, okay. Then like you kind of like, oh, your family. Even though I don't know you.
Yeah. So it's like this whole like everybody on the reservation is so interconnected where it's like literal blood and family ties. Like they're so connected. Everybody is like so interwoven, for better, for worse. Yeah. They're so interwoven with each other. But yeah, things are unraveling. Suko. I'm gonna get there.
You're not.
I probably won't, but Jasmine will correct me. He's spilling all the beans. He is spilling all the beans. Yeah. He's genuinely racked with guilt. And they found him because they found a welding glove in Doug's house that belonged to Suko. He didn't even try and hide it. No. He just had like one solitary glove in his stuff. Like I don't think it was real hard for the investigators to piece that together. Yeah. Especially after he started confessing.
You know what happens when you actually try, you know, because it's happening in a state, and so they have, you know, jurisdiction. They're like, oh yeah, I'll try. Let me solve this. You know.
Yeah, woo, and they did.
Mind blowing.
Yeah. And you know, so they got him on Doug. He confessed to killing Doug, and then he starts to confess to Casey's murder as well. And they weren't even looking at that angle until Lissa was pushing it, and then they started looking.
Well, there was somebody else who wanted a deal and said, I'll talk about this, but if you give me a deal, I'll talk about the second murder.
Was George? I don't think he was a police officer. I think he was one of the drivers.
Yes,
for Blackstone.
Yes, because he said that he saw them go behind a juniper tree, and then he didn't see them again.
Yes.
And I was like, who's George?
George is one of the drivers for Blackstone. We got there. We figured it out. There's so many characters. But yeah, so because Suko was saying that James wanted him to come to North Dakota to kill somebody, but it wasn't Casey.
Oh, he didn't want them to be killed, remember? He just wanted them to be.
He didn't outright say killed. He wanted them to be messed up. And then Suko was like, "Oh, you want me to beat him up?" And James would be like, "No." And then to where they got.
No. He said, "Yes."
I want him out of the way.
He has a gun. He carries a gun on him, so be careful. So instead of beating him up, I'm going to hit him with some weapon, lead pipe, like crowbar, whatever you hit him with, and stuff like that. Thinking that that's not going to kill a person?
Well, I think that, Suko pretty much knew, and well, he didn't know it was Casey that James wanted to have taken out at first. And then when he got there, it ended up being about Casey, because Casey obviously probably found out that Blackstone is a shell and they're embezzling tons of money. And was going to expose them, and he was moving to another oil rig company in North Dakota, and I'm sure he was going to expose everything. And so once Suko got there, then he realized it was KC, and he didn't. And this is what's really interesting, is he was saying that he didn't want to kill anybody.
Yeah,
he didn't want to kill anybody, but I think it was a carjack or something that but he hit him like 6 times. Exactly. He also shot Doug like 5 times.
Yeah, well, I think after Casey, he's like, well,
I've already done it once.
You do it once, you know, if I get caught, I'm going to jail forever.
Yeah. So, but he confessed to killing Casey, and that it was on James's behest, and Doug was too. And he took his body and buried it in the Badlands. And this is like kind of a point of interest. So they say his body is here. So the officers take Suko and they, drive him all around the Badlands trying to find this body. And Lissa has been searching for this body for years at this point.
Yeah.
And they take him all over, but there's this rumor that Casey's body was moved.
Yes.
And the location is TBD. They don't know. And they say it was a local tribal guy that moved this body.
Yeah, but he was a drug addict.
Yes.
And then when they asked to talk, he didn't want to talk.
Yes, which makes sense. But it also makes sense why they would do it, because if Robert DeLau offered this kid drugs to move this body, he would probably do it.
So is that why when they went behind the juniper tree and they're like, they saw that hole?
Yeah, because they dug up the body.
That makes more sense. Because I was asking him, like, what is this hole? They see no body. What is this hole?
Because they dug up the body and they moved it.
Oh.
But they don't know where.
No,
and so Lissa kept getting these anonymous calls being like, his body is here. Do you have your phone? Do you have a map open? His body's here. And so basically they think they know where Casey's body is, but they've never found it. And to this day, they have not found it. And I think for Lissa anyways, she says that perhaps it's the way it's supposed to be, because it's beautiful land there. So at least he's at peace wherever he is. So perhaps it's for the best that he is not ever found.
Yeah, some families find it more comforting to not have their loved ones found versus be found and I guess have that finalization.
Yeah. So then, now trials are happening and they're trying to prove that James hired to have these two men killed.
Serial hire for murder.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, like the first.
Yeah, the first. And then, what her deal was with all of this. Like, how much did she do? How much didn't she do? I think she really did a lot more than what she said, which obviously she wants to save herself. She
acted like she was very innocent. Like, you've got to
She acted very innocent.
There's got to be like 5 shell companies.
Yeah, well, because she acted like she had no idea. She's just signing all these documents and putting her name in all this stuff and buying all this stuff in her name because she was the one with good credit. But it's not suspicious at all when really they're embezzling like over $1.5 million.
Could you imagine your husband just bringing you a bunch of papers? You're like, yeah, sure.
Just sign away.
Whatever.
Why not?
I believe you. Like, I love my husband. I don't trust him that much.
Well, especially and they bring it up a lot, but James has a pretty extensive criminal history. Yeah. And he's not a good guy in any shape or form.
You shouldn't trust anything he says.
He's not a good guy. Yeah. And Sarah knows it. But she tries to play this, kind of like a Pollyanna type character where she's like, oh, I don't know. Optimistic, I don't know. But she's not. I think she's like a femme fatale. She knows.
Oh my God.
I'm bringing it back.
No, don't.
Bringing it back around.
She's not a femme fatale.
I think she is.
You really need to find a book that has one so you can stop. She's not.
I will never stop.
She is also not a femme fatale.
This is
not an award.
I think she is. I think she knows a lot more, and I think she was a lot more involved than she will ever probably admit to.
I think she was complicit. I don't think, because a femme fatale will have their hands on the puppets. She don't have no hands on nothing.
I think she's the master manipulator. I think she manipulated James too. I think she's the master manipulator. This is my opinion. You're forming your own.
Read the book.
But I think she's a lot more involved than she lets on.
I think she was too. I don't think she was a master of anything.
I do.
I don't think she was a master of nothing.
But anyway, so they're going to the trial, and James is convicted, even though they never did find Casey's body. He is convicted of murder, both for murder for hire, for Doug and for Casey, and he's sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. And then Sarah is only convicted for fraud, mail fraud.
Did she 3 years or something?
Yeah. She never had to serve any prison time. Oh. She just got 18 months probation. So did Robert. They got out with just probation. And so, obviously Lissa's attending this trial, and they still haven't given her any credit for basically solving this case.
No, yeah, no.
Law enforcement never gave her any credit or even acknowledged her participation in
she was acknowledging
solving
other, what do you want to call them? Groups?
Yes.
Associations?
Yes.
They gave her awards, which was really nice. And like,
it was.
Because I think her kids finally saw, like, mom's not just, like, crazy. She's actually doing good. This is a passion, and this is good for her, and this is good for people.
And it's a good path for her to go on because it's, you know, keeping her sober, basically, and keeping her around for her kids and her grandkids. Because, like, Lissa would always say, like, she wasn't going to live past her 30s. Yeah, like, she was going to die young. And you know, obviously her kids don't want that, and this is keeping her around.
Well, she acknowledged that it was crazy that she could just walk out of her kids' lives, which as a mom I do find nuts because I don't know how you could do that. But I guess if you don't feel like you're going to live that long, and you have like an addiction,
you're not in your right mind. You're not really thinking clearly.
Yeah, because you know,
because she clearly loves her children. Like, it really comes across. Like, she will do anything for them, and she really feels an intense amount of guilt about everything that she put them through.
CJ's story is super sad.
But it's like she feels an intense amount of guilt. But also, it didn't start great. Like, you know, Shauna's father is
5 dads, 5 babies.
Yeah, but you know, Lissa was sold in sex trafficking, and I think Shauna was a byproduct of that. They never directly say so. Yeah. But I think so, because it's a huge secret in their family.
And she found the father, but they never tell us. I'm like, who's the father?
I think that's what it is.
Obi's dad isn't great.
No, terrible. Almost killed Lissa.
Yeah. Who do we know Micah's dad?
I don't think so.
I don't think we know Micah. Then there's Lindsay that she doesn't talk about very much.
No, not as much.
And
CJ.
5.
CJ. She has 5 kids.
Yeah. I don't think we talk about CJ's dad either.
No.
But he went to go live with Lindsay and CJ went to go live with their fathers for a while.
Because they basically all got split up in different ways.
When your mom goes to prison, that happens.
Yeah. But I mean, in more than that, like, you know, Lissa, she went to like rehab for a while. Her mom, Irene, would try and commit her to force her to get sober, and then the kids would be dispersed.
Yeah, she was smart though, and to keep herself out of all of those institutions.
Yes, like, she was really smart. Lissa's really smart.
Which, you know, is a problem when you're trying to get help. You're like trying to help somebody, like, no, talk her way out of it.
Yeah. And I think, like, again, intergenerational trauma, I really see it in this family. And basically, this matriarchal line is the only people keeping this family together.
Which I think in that culture is actually, like, it is a matriarchal.
Yeah, because people, like, and they say in the beginning of the book, like, the women are really the ones that hold the power. Like, if you ever want something done, go ask somebody's grandma. Yeah. And they'll get it done. Type of deal.
True. Always.
Yeah. Grandmas get things done. But yeah, so, you know, they never really acknowledged Lissa, but she did get acknowledged in many other ways. And because of her intense search for Casey and how successful she was at what she does, a lot of other families started to reach out to Lissa to ask them to search for their missing loved ones because of a myriad of different reasons. People weren't looking for them.
Yeah. Sad about her niece.
Yes, her niece, Chucky's daughter. Chucky is Lissa's favorite, probably her favorite uncle, she says. And he committed suicide in very sad fashion. But his daughter went missing, and Lissa didn't hear about it until like 3 weeks after she had gone missing, because Chucky's daughter was addicted to meth, and they thought that she went off on some type of bender, but she would be back, but she never came back. Yeah. And it turns out she had been killed when Lissa found her.
Drug deal gone wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of other cases that are really sad. Like, one case, she went to look for this woman whose family had reported her missing, and this guy had abandoned her on the side of the road, and she found this truck, and it was like winter, and so she went in, turned it on, and died of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Mm-hmm. Savannah is probably one of
the
most popular,
famous, at least of so far, of Lissa's investigations into missing people, and that one was really, really sad.
Yeah, let's not retouch that one.
We won't, but I mean, it's that one that really got Lissa a lot of media attention. I think she was on like Dateline and other different like big true crime shows to talk about that case. And they are going to make Yellow Bird into a show on Paramount Plus. So that will be interesting to watch.
I didn't know that. That's gonna be. There's also like, it's nice, not nice, but it's, I don't know how I would say this.
I mean, it needs to be brought to light. Like
a lot of this in different areas, like in all the Native American women gone missing in, you know, North America, Canada, Alaska, I guess it's Americas, you know, is being brought to attention. It's being brought into light, you know, that these people need to be found. These people need to be protected. Yeah. You know.
Well, because, I mean, statistically, Indigenous women have a higher percentage than any other group of women to go missing and be murdered, which is insane. And it's just because of this...
Because everyone's hands is tied.
But, like, forced to be that way, you know? Like it's a choice, right? Not by the Indigenous peoples, but by the federal government. It's a choice. And they also choose what cases to take and don't take. And I think that statistically as well, Indigenous women are more likely to be sex trafficked than any other group of women because there's no... The law enforcement isn't going to pursue it, basically.
Yeah, there's no safety net.
No, and I think it is great. It is great, but it's terrible that this is happening. Yeah. But it's great that it's the books like these, TV shows, they're coming to light exactly what is happening.
Yeah, they bring the issues to the forefront, which is a way to get people to know what's going on, because unless you put it in media, people aren't going to really know what's going on.
Exactly. And it's
unless you search for it.
Yeah, and it's great that the author did choose to tell this story through Lissa and her family, because you feel it, like it's immediate. Like all of these people are in this immediate family are going missing.
Yeah, and the history that she brings in of the reservation and like all of that is like really powerful.
It is.
And I really appreciate her putting it in there.
Yes. I mean, you can see why, after you read the book, it was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize. Like, it's really good.
Yeah.
And it's important. It's important.
Yeah. I disagree that Sarah's not a femme fatale, but...
I mean, I will die on that hill. I think so.
Yeah. All right. Let's agree to disagree again.
I think we'll have to. As I bring up a femme fatale in every book we read from now on.
We're going to read A Christmas Tale, and she's going to be like, this is a femme fatale. Like, what is the Christmas Tale? Who's the guy who has the crutch?
Tiny Tim.
But who's his dad? Because all I'm thinking is Kermit the Frog right now.
In the Muppet Christmas Story. Oh, what is his name? I don't know, but... It's Scrooge's assistant.
Yeah, it's right out of my tongue. But I'm going to say that you think that his wife is now femme fatale.
I'll prove it.
The Ghost of Christmas Past, femme fatale.
Join us next time for my dissertation.
I'm in Muppets Christmas Tale.
Yes.
Oh, we should do that. Is that a book?
The Christmas Carol is a book.
Yeah, but
not the Muppets Christmas Carol.
I mean, it's the best one.
It is real good. But we do hope you join us next time. It will be December. I may or may not give a dissertation on A Christmas Carol, but we will be reading a book in the found family genre. We don't quite know what it is yet, but we hope you join us then.
Yeah.